GM Landmeister, how are you doing today, sir?
GM, doing well. How about yourselves?
We are all Gucci and doing great. Looking forward to today's LI.Fi. Let's talk cross-chain series. Um, now that everyone's here, are you guys ready to begin?
For sure.
Let's do it.
Great. Let's go. Let's go. Well, once again, welcome to all the community today to LI.FI's Let's Talk Cross-Chain interview series. Today we have no other but the Omni team with us here today. They are a mobile first Web3 wallet whose mantra is Web3 for all. I don't know, I think I'll get a tattoo about that. And the wallet is built to be easy to use for everyone in the crypto space, and they recently decided to integrate LI.FI for bridging. On the call we have Seraphin and Alex. How are you guys doing today?
Super great. Thanks for having us.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for popping by. I know our community appreciates it, and we're really excited about this integration. So, hey, while we start, we'd love to know a little bit more about what do you do at Omni, and tell us about your crypto background.
Sure. Seraphin here. I'm the CEO of Omni. Basically translates into I get, drinks and refreshments for the devs as they do the really important stuff, and everything else that kind of like falls in between. My background in crypto, I got introduced to the space back in 2014 through my first angel investor, Tim Draper. I've been spending a lot of time working on data sovereignty solutions. Built one of the first data marketplaces, which was well ahead of its time. So Omni, was kind of like a passion project turned into a real full-time company, which is pretty awesome. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
On my side, maybe just for clarity, my name's Alex, but I go by Kobe on Twitter with my little green avatar. I got into crypto on a surface level around like 2018. We were doing some SDK related things, but it was quite a different industry back then. And like my last role as a protocol engineer at one of these EVM compatible Alt L1s, that's where I like really dove into everything. And this L1 in particular was quite mobile focused. I had a lot of experience just working with different application teams, dApp teams, just all across the stack really. And the thing that stood out to me was that the wallet space was just lacking so far behind. And so when Seraphin gave me a call early last year to start working on kind of like a multi-chain staking wallet, as we had kind of envisioned it at the time, just felt like a no-brainer for me to jump into that full time. And now we're like a little bit over a year into this, and we've finally shipped our, we have rebranded, shipped our seminal release, and super happy to be here.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing a bit about your backgrounds with us and giving us some insights into the journey before the journey. That's really great for us to hear and just see where you guys come from and what you have planned ahead. We have Mark with us currently in NYC. He has some cool things he wants to touch on. So Mark, over to you.
Awesome. Super excited to be on this little chat with y'all. But I think before we get started, and get really deep into the details here, can y'all just give a brief TLDR on Omni? I know your website says 10,000 crypto assets are available across 27 blockchains, but let's just set the stage for all the listeners on what you guys are building over there, because I think it's pretty sweet.
Sure. So basically what we're building is what we like to call a next generation Web3 wallet. So it's, a self-custodial wallet that is, immediately compatible without any setup with most of the major blockchains, and allows you to do basically anything you need to do to use Web3 all in one place. So, we like to say that it's as easy as CeFi, but fully DeFi. because we have, we abstract away a lot of the complexity of most of the very important, transactions and flows in Web3, such as staking, liquid staking, native bridges and swaps, et cetera, et cetera. And we allow you to perform all of these, transactions very easily in one place, on your mobile phone, without any of the underlying complexity. So yeah, we really, want to give users one place that they can manage all of their crypto from. And the idea is to kind of like blur the boundaries between Web 2 and Web 3, with it being fully self-custodial and fully rooted in the principles of self-sovereignty of Web 3.
Beautiful. I think the key word there is abstract. That's we talk about that all the time here at LI.Fi, where we want the end user to never even really know what chain they're on, or what dApp they're using, or what even bridge they're using. And with that, this call is kind of highlighted by our recent partnership. Y'all decided to integrate us to allow for bridging and swapping. Can y'all just kind of talk about that feature? What led you to adding bridging and swapping? Because that's not the major aspect of a lot of wallets. I won't name some of your big competitors, but we've all used the Orange Fox. So I'll just let y'all run with that.
Sure, I can kind of give you an answer from like the economic and philosophical side, and then Alex, feel free to jump in and expand on this from the technical side. But we've so our idea again was to have a wallet that was immediately compatible with pretty much any major chain, and at this point we're counting 27 chains if you also include some of the Cosmos SDK based chains. But it's EVM, non-EVM, layer 2, etc. And we wanted to provide, we were really building this around the concept of a fat wallet. So traditionally, wallets were, thin wallets, which just concern themselves with three things, which is key management, asset custody, and transaction signing. Everything else was done outside of the wallet, and the wallet itself was this very utilitarian part of the stack that you interacted with a lot, but it didn't really have a lot of depth. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to build a quote-unquote fat wallet that had a lot of functionality readily available across all these different protocols, right? So we started with staking, hence also the kind of like the play on words name stake wallet that we initially launched with, and we were quickly going beyond just staking. We're very proud and did a lot of work on the staking infrastructure in order to abstract away complexity, but we got into liquid staking, then we got into yield vault support. Recently, we started to add support for Aave v3 across several networks. We have NFTs supported across most of these blockchains. And the thing that was, while we provided a lot of depth for each individual protocol itself, the issue was that it was multi-chain, but it was not cross-chain. And so, if you take a look at the ecosystem now, one thing that has really come to the forefront as a virtue of Web3 is composability across the Web3 stack. And I think that's a phenomenon that was really driven, obviously, by DeFi summer of all the individual, Lego blocks in the DeFi stack, but then they also expanded through all the bridges and DEX aggregators and everything that were built, and then obviously protocols such as LI.FI, which frankly made adding support for bridging and swapping, and if you compare the style of composability and collaboration with where we used to be about 2016, 2017, 2018, it's very different and has resulted in a very different atmosphere of building. Back in the day, it was there was still a lot of soul searching around the major use cases for Web3. We had an amazing technology. We didn't really know what to do with it yet. A lot of competition at the layer 1 level. And that basically resulted in a lot of tribalism. You had all these individual layer 1 tribes that were trying to go after one another. And of course, to a certain extent, you still have that, right? With Bitcoin maxis, Ethereum maxis, and certain alt L1 maxis. But adding, adding bridging and swap support was kind of symbolic for us in us wanting to go away from, just this very isolated and almost like tribal deep experience that we're offering on most of these protocols to one that was truly cross-chain, allowing our users to try out basically the best of all the different chains. And in our view, the future is multi-chain, things being built on all these different networks, and then we want to support them all, and we want to give our users the opportunity to easily explore anything that these different blockchains have to offer. And I think a key terminology for us here is cross-pollination, right? And you as a user should be able to easily have access to the finest protocols. So it was a workload that was extremely important to us, very, very dear to our heart, and again, I think was kind of like a symbolic act for us to also cement this notion of collaboration and composability rather than tribalism. But yeah, Alex, feel free to weigh in here too.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have too much more to add on top of that. I mean, for us, as some of you may know, we did recently just undergo a rebrand, and even from the initial like alpha release of our product, right, we were annoyed at, like, we were in the early days, right, we were building this as a wallet almost for ourselves, right, like we were pretty heavy DeFi users, and we just wanted like a more powerful wallet. And the most annoying thing even then, right, was having to go to some third-party website, as nice as the transfer to XYZ site is, it was like a bit of a barrier for users to connect their wallet to that website and do the swap there, and then come back into their wallet and to do like some staking or lending operations. So we always kind of imagined just like this pathway for users of all the things they can do in the wallet, and like the swaps unlock so much of that. With our swap integration, I think maybe we're like a little bit opinionated about how we built it, right? I think the typical swap interface that everyone knows and loves is always like inspired by the Uniswap one. It's just like a simple from asset to asset, and you click swap. And like, especially on mobile devices, like where there's not a whole lot of screen real estate, I see that's what a lot of our competitors go for, like this very simple UI. But our co-founder and head of design, he had kind of like a different vision for that, and he likens our swap UI more to like a flight finder, where you basically specify your from and to destination, and then you get like a list of routes, basically, some that are best, some that are quickest. And I think we really wanted to make that like choice factor front and center in our app, whereas like a lot of other wallets, they will kind of just choose the best path for you. But it makes it feel like a little bit more spaceshipy, So, yeah.
Yeah, to me, it sounds like y'all are building a super app for crypto. I know that's kind of like a hot term in fintech, but where it's kind of just a one-stop shop for anything you want to do in space. I think wallets have a very very cool spot in crypto to be able to do that, where users would never even have to leave. My one question for y'all is, are you looking into, I know you're using us for token bridging, are you looking into more like cross-chain contract call type stuff in going into the future? Or is it right now just kind of using us as a liquidity network on the bridging space?
Yeah, definitely. So to get into the weeds of our integration, right? We basically, for right now, we're super proud of our integration, and we actually use a few different providers on the back end. LI.FI being one of our main ones with the most broadest network support. But really, the idea for us, right, is going to be, where possible, to use DEX and bridge aggregators like yourselves. But then also do bespoke integrations, right? So, for example, if we wanted to support Starknet, we can just integrate like an Ethereum to Starknet bridge and allow users to jump there. So when we come to looking forward, after we have like more broad support for various networks and bridges, and most importantly, maybe when we wrap up our multi-hop support. So one thing we kind of like a shortcut we took, to be honest, right, to ship this feature is we decided to not do any multi-hop support for the first pass. That's going to be coming in the next couple of weeks, just because like we wanted to take the time to properly work out all the UX flows, and also we saw that like over time, when I first used Li.Fi, before it was even on like the transfer to domain, I haven't verified this with you guys, but I feel like there was a lot of multi-hop calls, and now when I use it, it's often just like a single hop. So I think there's quite a bit of optimization going on behind the scenes there, like where possible, make it a single hop route. So we kind of like we're banking on that, right, to make our job a little bit easier. And now that we've shipped something, we can go and add the like more tricky UX multi-hop stuff. But I think a very real like possibility in the future for Web3 is one where like, people don't necessarily have to think about the network they're on, right? If I'm buying a coffee at a coffee shop, does it really matter to me if my USDC is on Solana or ZK Sync or Optimism, right? So in this case, this is exactly where like these cross-chain contract calls are going to become so important. I think something we really like is the UX at Yearn. I think I don't know if they pioneered it, right? But like their Zap, or maybe it was Zapper. Like you can zap into a position. You can tab USDC, for example, and you can like in one transaction call swap that half of that into DAI, put that into a liquidity pool, maybe into Curve, and then like stake that via Yearn, basically, right? And it's super easy just to imagine a more powerful version of that, where like you're aggregating liquidity across networks to make to make a very complex operation like one call for the user.
Yeah, the cross-chain zaps is going to be huge. We're actually testing that feature right now, just because we now support a couple bridges that offer contract calls. So maybe I'll send you some documentation over after this, because we can definitely talk about that. Jordan, do you want to hop in here? I kind of got deep into the weeds of bridge support here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like one of the most interesting things that I noticed about you guys was your multi-validator support. When I was just reading up on you guys and reading some of your blog posts, why is that important? What options do users have here with the multi-validator support that you guys offer?
Yeah, so we very early on we started to work together with a select subset of validators because we informed choices on our users' behalf, and we assessed several parameters in order to decide on working together with a validator or not. And one was obviously the validator fee. That's an obvious one. Obvious parameters such as the amount of uptime of the individual nodes, but then also contractual clauses such as slashing insurance, right? We wanted to make sure that if there was a slashing incident, that the validators had insurance in place in order to cover any of the losses that our users would inevitably incur. Other important components for us to consider were also just the general degree of support and efficiency and support that we're receiving from the different validators. So not to give any particular examples, but there were some larger names that we were in touch with early on that were just extremely hard to get a hold of, and there were others that were extremely quick, set up Slack groups with us, and for us to very quickly be able to coordinate with the different parts of their teams was just something that we felt was a very important proxy for situations where something might go wrong and where we actually needed to coordinate very closely. That's the reason why we initially started to only work together basically with two validators. Now we have expanded the support, and we have our list of kind of preferred validators, if you will. So if you stake and you select a validator, you'll see a list of preferred validators. And then, you know, we nonetheless didn't want this to be something that was paternalistic, right? In the process of abstracting away complexity, again, while still being fully self-custodial, there can be choices that you make that are well intended but can be a little bit overreaching, and we always want to default to a very safe and well thought out default case. But we also want to give users the possibility to customize things if they have other preferences. So we also do support wider validators at this point in time, and you can select other ones that we may not have actually done any due diligence on ourselves. And if you have a preference to set to delegate to another validator, that should be entirely possible. And with the latest release, it also is possible. But we still pride ourselves on our assessment of the different validators. We think it's a good value add, and that's the reason why we have these preferred.
One of my favorite things about Omni is how safe is the wrong word, but the type of staking y'all offer is, I mean, we're not seeing rates that are like 100 or 200 or 300% APY, which can sometimes be very scary and risky for users. Usually y'all are using like liquid staking or Aave. Can you maybe talk about your risk assessment when it comes to offering staking? Just because I think it's fascinating on how you're making the decision on, oh, okay, we're going to offer this vault, but maybe not this other vault that could be a little bit riskier.
Yeah, I think it's a similar type of process underlying our decisions to add staking support and vault support, as is underlying the multi-validator support. Really take a look under the hood and take a look at what exactly the processes are that are in place in order to generate the yield, right? So I think especially throughout the tail end of last year, October, November, with all the Ohm forks, there was definitely a lot of demand for us to add, every run-of-the-mill Ohm fork with 1,000% APY, and people were going all in on them. And we decided not to natively support any of them, simply because it was very obvious that it was not a sustainable form of yield, right? And this is actually also the reason why we started exclusively with as an initial yield mechanism, right? We could have added support for vaults or lending right out of the gate. But if you take a look at staking buy-in in itself as a generation asset class, if you will, excluding dApp chains for a moment, because there are obviously idiosyncrasies that make them a little different from public networks. You actually have a redistribution of network fees that is made available to people via staking. So it's a network-based dividend effectively that you're receiving, and that is the safest form of yield that you can actually get in Web3. And so by and large, this was the category that we wanted to focus on the most. That's where we also still have the broadest support. And in terms of yield vaults, we're really cautious to add just any yield vaults, simply because we want to make sure that the yield that you're getting is actually real yield, right? And we actually wrote a paper in a house before the term real yield became a thing on crypto Twitter, almost a year ago at this point, about real APY. And we were taking a look at various different components that were affecting, that were determining the safety of a certain yield generation opportunity. And one was, is it real yield or not? And how can we measure this real yield? What is the underlying governance structure that can change yield generation parameters to be changed? What is the distribution of tokens? How easy is it for people to in the token of the token owners to come together and decide to change on something, even if the actual governance mechanisms are check out from a safety perspective. So it's a really multifaceted analysis that we're doing in order to assess whether we want to add support for a vault or not. And that's also the reason why we're relatively slow, I would say, adding support. We could power hundreds of native integrations at this point in time, no problem. But ultimately, we kind of bear the responsibility, at least reputationally, towards the user. If we abstract away complexity from you accessing a certain opportunity or a vault, we're implicitly giving our thumbs up as this being a worthwhile yield opportunity. And so we just really want to be mindful of that. We want to make sure that our users have access to safe types of yields easily through Omni itself. And then if there's any yield opportunity that you want to get into beyond what we natively offer, then we have full support for Wallet Connect V1 and V2, and you can just scan a QR code, connect via the modal, and there you go. Right? It's a pretty seamless setup as well. But as far as actual native integrations go, we want to be very careful, and we really want to make sure that we've done our due diligence on the different types of yield generation methods before adding any of them.
Also, something so like as Serafin said, we obviously started with native staking, and the hoops that we have to jump through to like make our tap staking flow seamless across all these networks, this can be pretty mind-boggling. Especially some of the networks we support, like Binance or Avalanche or Solana, like where the staking flows are just so difficult for everyday users, and to squeeze all that just 3 taps on our side can be quite crazy. But I think I'm personally we're like paying very, very close attention to a lot of these standards coming up for like vault-based access, right? So I think 4626 is probably a number a lot of us on this call have heard before, and this will be like a game changer for building native integrations in the app. Yes, there's like still a lot of the due diligence we need to do around the underlying, how safe the underlying yield is. But as soon as standard hit mainstream, it will be so much easier for us to roll out native integrations in the app, because it's honestly just like a couple smart contract calls. So yeah, we're also like, maybe in some cases, I think we were almost too early, right? We did a ton of work, and the community is going to make that easy for us moving forward sometime soon.
It's always good to be too early, right? Because then you can be the first to ship, if anything ever changes. But just some community alpha, you can get 29% on DAI on pretty much every chain that Omni supports here. I'm looking at your vaults right now, which that's pretty sweet yield. Okay, so y'all have Aave live, auto liquid staking. Any other vaults that we should be looking forward to in the near future, specifically, or are we going to keep that under wraps?
I can quickly jump in. I think we have pretty broad support for a lot of native integrations across these EVM chains, right? Via Aave and via Yearn. And of course, whenever like these networks roll out, like whenever these applications roll out to more networks, we're always going to be like one of the first wallets there, right? But I think lately we've been kind of itching for a new challenge, right? And I think on the tech side, at least, it would be very exciting for us to explore some vaults on some of these more bespoke networks, such as like Solana or Near, these kind of things, where it's like, it's a little bit greenfield work for us, right? Maybe Serafin, you want to jump in?
Yeah, to add to that, I think we're also really looking to amp up support for liquid assets. Liquid staking is one of the concepts that we're really bullish on and have been very bullish on for over a year. Obviously, liquid assets are only as good as the degree of composability that they offer in the DeFi stack. And we'd love to get to a place where, and we support several liquid staking assets from staked ETH, staked Solana, staked Matic, SA, VAX, etc. And we definitely want to get to a place where you can stake and receive your liquid staked asset back, and then we immediately have a couple of vaults that you can deploy your liquid staked asset into and make that one seamless transaction. So creating a certain staking value chain, if you will, is something that we're definitely looking to increase capabilities around in the near future.
Liquid staking, gotta love it. Well, just keeping with the theme about what the future might have, you guys currently have so many great features. I really love your three-step staking mechanism. It's really great. Over 10,000 assets and 27 blockchains. But let's talk a little bit about your expansion plans to new chains and what features maybe you'd like to add on as you expand.
Sure. I think at a high level, same relatively, like the same balance of trying to be fast but also cautious applies here. We've been talking with a lot of teams that are building new alternative L1s, and obviously I think they're always looking for broader wallet support, and I think that we have a very attractive product offering with a really clean mobile experience, cross-chain. Again, I think also for them the idea of cross-pollination is very interesting. If you have a attractive offer, and it's easy for users to go from one chain to another, the complexity and the burden of adopting a new layer one become obviously that becomes less and less, and the more adoption you will see. But I think we've been cautious yet again to add support too early, and for several reasons. For one, it's because we actually want to add support once there are interesting things to do. We don't necessarily want to add support before there is a good API for NFTs that we can tap into, or before protocols offering interesting yield. So I think that's stage gated a little bit from the infrastructure becoming mature enough that we actually have enough to do for users, and make that natively accessible through Omni. That's one. But then also on the other hand, I think it's about and I'm thinking that you guys are probably constantly are making the same decision here and are trying to titrate the same parameters around speed and being cautious. It's also about the underlying security of the network, right? So we've been in situations before, for instance, with Terra, where we had native Terra support in the wallet itself, and then obviously once the entire network, or actually just UST melted down, there was a really big problem for us, because at the end of the day, if a user interacts with a wallet that offers so much all in one place, and if you really want to be a fat wallet, then we also need to be comfortable with the fact that users will primarily associate anything that goes wrong with us as the wallet rather than the underlying technology. So we're bearing the reputational consequences, and that's something that we always need to keep in mind. So we really want to make sure that things are mature enough that we feel comfortable adding them, knowing full well, obviously, that there is always a tail risk that we can never fully account for, and that's just what it is. The space is still very early, but we definitely want to make sure that we are conscientious in the way that we're assessing the pros and cons of adding any one alternative layer one or new blockchain, and we're always going to err on the side of caution rather than speed, because we want to make sure that users don't get burned in Web3, right? So especially since we're placing such a big focus on ease of use and ease of adoption across chains, I think this is something that is obviously very well positioned for people that are comparatively newer in the space, and we want to make sure that these people have a great experience, and that is a delight for them to use Web3, that they don't get burned, and that they want to stick around and also bring their friends on board. That's really our objective. The way we can do this is if we really walk this this path between speed and cautiousness very, very carefully.
Yeah, I think maybe I can add one more thing. I think now that I actually don't have a concrete number of how many networks we support, but I think it's something over 5. And just adding, like when we consider adding a new network nowadays, it's a little bit more involved, right, for us at this stage. We of course have in the past just simply added a new network, and we only added custody, right? But when we think about the way I like to phrase it is like answering that what's next question for users. When I onboard someone into Web3, it used to be kind of a little bit jarring for people, right? They would write down their seed phrase, they would transfer, they would like go via a fiat on ramp to get some money in, and then they would maybe transfer some tokens to me, right, just to get into the flow of things. But then they would always kind of ask like, what's next? And I think with Omni, like we're really trying to answer that question, right? We have like a dedicated explore page where we let people look into all the different things they can do in Web3. And so when we look at like a new network, we kind of have to ask ourselves, like, is there stuff to do on this network, right? And there's not actually that many networks, but there's a lot of stuff to be done. We have to look at like now that we have like added, with our Omni release, we added the support for Ledger, which I'm super proud of because we support every single network in Omni via Ledger, which was an absolute mountain of effort. But as we are exploring, more account management solutions, right? Potentially account abstraction, potentially MPC powered things. We have to also look at the infrastructure for the networks we're looking at supporting, and see if that'll be compatible with these like new account management things we're looking at. Same with like bridging and swapping. Now that we have this bridging and swapping feature, it can be a little bit strange if users try to use this new network, but then they can't bridge or swap to that, right? So I think we're like much more down the vertically integrating path at this stage, even though we reserve a lot of capacity, I think, for new networks. I don't think like just doing simple custody for us is not super interesting.
Well, it's also interesting to have one-stop shop for like having something nice, easy to use, and with all the rails and with all the analysis for kind of the newcomers in the space to really have the most pleasant UX and experience, not just from a safety, but like, as you said, from all of the verticals. I have like one question that is more like just as an interest. You were mentioning analysis that you're doing before you actually add protocols for yield. You're like mentioning like good or high quality yield. I'm actually interested, how does it differ, like the results in the analysis during bull and bear market? And does it actually? So are you like always picking cream from like cream de la cream, or bull market actually skews the results and kind of the view on certain protocols and yields?
I really shouldn't, right? It's something that should be completely. It should be yielding the same result outside of the overall market context. Of course, there's certain. This kind of like goes back to the question of what are the underlying parameters in order to change anything in the yield generation methodology at the governance level. And obviously, it's easier, comparatively speaking, in one market or the other to maybe get a vote on a certain proposal passed or attack, to collude with other actors in a network in order to build up a large enough voting share in order to get a proposal passed that skews the underlying parameters of the yield methodology. But this should, I think by and large, it should not depend on bull or bear. And we're also trying to be very mindful of not going for, I would say like quote unquote like bull traps of specific yield generation opportunities, right? So case in point, again, forks of last year, having having natively integrated Om forks would have probably been, a cheat code for us from a customer acquisition perspective. But it's also something that would have absolutely burned us down the line, just because we knew that we knew full well that this was not sustainable and that this was not, real yield. People were, the problem with DeFi at large is that there's still a lot of, TradFi terminology that gets thrown around and applied to concepts that are in essence, fully the polar opposite of what they're actually supposed to describe. And I think APY by and large is probably the most perverted one, right? Where everything is APY. But especially for instance, for the Om forks, this was pure inflation, right? You actually didn't gain anything. You just kind of like, if you staked, you preserve your stake, your percentage stake in that network. You didn't get diluted, right? Again, I think it's something where we need to be very careful not to get too excited about something just because a lot of people in the space get excited, and we do a sober analysis, and the result of that analysis, outside of the components that I just talked about, should bear the same results, bull or bear.
Gotcha. Love it.
Yeah, 100% agree with you there. Well, as a community manager, I'm always thinking about what are the best practices for our users of our protocols and our offerings. So I want to ask this question, like, what would be the best wallet practices for the cross-chain world and the Omni users? What would you recommend to the Omni users?
Yeah, I mean,
Alex, go ahead.
it's a good question. I mean, I think so. I think one massive faux pas I think I see a lot of maybe relatively newer people to the Web3 space doing is sharing seeds between wallets. Since we've recently rolled out ledger support as well, I would say that one of the best things you could do is invest in a ledger, especially the Nano X one with the Bluetooth capabilities, and just use that for almost everything. I think it's like it's a little bit bizarre. It costs about $100 as well, which is a blocker for many people in the world. But I think the safety you get for having a ledger is pretty unparalleled. I also kind of I've been playing recently with just having like a Gnosis safe set up, and just with a couple signers, and like I still use my Omni wallet for everything, but just via the Gnosis safe, right? Which is also pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, on the topic of like sharing seed phrases between wallets, we saw like a pretty disastrous and scary, what was perceived as a hack, was, in the worst case, people were calling it there was some fear of a supply chain attack, right? And like NPM dependencies, or people were thinking it's like a nonce reuse bug, like leading to leaked private keys on chain, all sorts of things. But at the end of the day, it was like simply people had like used the same seed phrase in two wallets, and then that second wallet, the security practices they had weren't necessarily as good as what you would expect. I think one thing for us is that, so said, like, we're trying to make Omni like a one-stop shop for everything, right? You can in our wallet, you can stake, you can lend, you can swap, all these good things. But that, quite frankly, there's just a big world of Web3 outside the wallet, and like we really encourage you to use all these applications. And we support Wallet Connect V1 and V2. We were actually one of the first wallets to support V2, and we're really like helping to push forward Wallet Connect V2 on these other non-EVM networks, right? Like Solana, Near, Starknet, so on. And one thing we really felt, right, is that when you're using Wallet Connect and you're connected to an application and you're signing transactions from your phone, it's absolutely paramount that you have some like level of insight, or you can like observe what will be happening on chain when you sign these transactions. So we put a lot of effort into like what we call our like decoding and enriching pipeline. So when I do operations via Wallet Connect right now on whichever chain, right, I kind of get told I don't have to necessarily trust the application because I can verify what would be happening inside Omni. So a simple like add liquidity operation on Uniswap, right? That gets decoded and like enriched nicely on your phone, so you can see exactly what you're doing, right? And that's like a couple was like a nice hijack on sushi, right? And I think that really opened up people's eyes because people were doing things on the sushi interface, which they perceived to be safe, and then they were like getting rugged. But with like this new decoding enriching pipeline, which we still have like a lot of improvements to do, this is like the first step for us to really making interacting with all of Web3 like a lot safer.
Yeah, to add to that, I would also, outside of the call to action to really use a ledger, which you should definitely try out if you do have a ledger in NOx. Then definitely try out our ledger integration. It's unbelievably smooth, and you can have all of your assets easily accessible and easily visible wherever you go, and you can easily control them when you have your ledger available, and you can see all of your favorite NFTs all in one place without ever having to risk them being stolen. Obviously, as long as you don't have your ledger on you all the time. But the other thing that I would urge users to do native, right? We're spending a lot of time building native integrations, and we're not just reducing complexity by means of native integrations, but we're also reducing risk, right? Because it's the risk of signing the wrong transaction, interacting with a wrong smart contract, and high amounts of complexity and risk obviously means high barriers to entry, which means less participants in Web3, which to smaller market cap, and is effectively bad for everyone, right? And I think if you're new to Web3, or if you are not doing everything completely custom, then I think just go native. We're really spending a lot of time to make this as easily accessible as possible, and that also drastically reduces risk, which we think has extreme positive offset for the entire ecosystem.
That's some good advice. I have a follow-up question on kind of enriching that you were saying. So if I'm understanding correctly, it's basically making the user journey more human readable, right? So I'm going to, I don't know, stake something, and the UI is going to tell me, hey, you're using ETH, and you're going to stake it into this verified pool from like this project and stuff like that, instead of just being like a wallet to wallet kind of, or wallet to smart contract transaction.
Yeah, so a good way to think about it is kind of like untrusted code execution, right? So the point Seraphim is making about going native is when you're in the Omni flow for staking, we have a very like similar staking flow for all of our integrations, right? You choose how much you want to stake. If it's for any yield opportunity, I guess I should say, right? You choose how much you want to deposit. If it's a staking integration, you choose the validator, and then you basically click confirm, right? And that UI is always the same across staking integrations, or depositing or lending, right? We just change some words, but it's basically the same. But when we're dealing with like third-party applications, right, what they're saying is, here's a transaction, like, do you want to run this transaction? And that transaction could really do anything, right? I mean, I'm sure we all know someone who, or maybe yourselves, right, who you accidentally click approve without looking at the transaction, and all your funds are gone, right? Or it's something even more sinister, right? We accidentally approve funds to the wrong contract, and then they get stolen later, and you don't even know about it. So yeah, it's kind of like untrusted code execution, and we just want to like make that a lot more obvious. I see you've got your hand up. Maybe you want to jump in.
Yeah, I have firsthand experience. No, it was basically hand up. Yes, I felt it. Not I have something to say.
I see. Yeah. So that anyway, that's like generally how I think about it. For our native integrations, we don't. It's a little bit different, right? We're because we've built this integration, we can trust everything we're showing the user. For third party signing, it's kind of like, yeah, we just need to give the user as much information as possible, and if possible, like if we can tell them, hey, this contract, we know this contract is malicious ahead of time. That's even better, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We I'm gonna just to add on that. For similar situations, we're using Go Plus on our UI. Basically, they check the kind of verified as smart contracts, token addresses, and then put a little like green check mark, a yellow sign if it's not verified, and a red X if it's malicious, basically. So definitely a good thing for the users.
Mm-hmm. That's the exact idea. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. What we've been giving a lot of thought at LI.FI, in terms of how we build, what we build. And I suppose everyone in the space at the moment is thinking and trying to answer this age-old question. I promise you, it's not as complicated as I'm making it out to be. But how do we take this mainstream? Maybe you can touch on that a little bit more. How do we take crypto mainstream for the broader person? How do we actually get them into the space to want to use Omni wallet and get involved with all the features that's available to them?
I think it all comes back to abstraction of complexity. And I already made this point, but I think it's such an important point that it's possibly worthwhile repeating, right? If you think about, for instance, staking as a use case, and then really the reason why we started with staking outside of the safety element. So it's not just a safe means of getting yield, but it was a means of getting yield that was extremely broken in comparison to how safe and also important it was for the different networks, where effectively every single protocol had their own staking mechanism, and this was an extremely heterogeneous user experience where users would need to relearn from scratch how staking worked for each individual network every time they wanted to use a new network. And that type of complexity obviously it creates incredible barriers to entry. The amount of time that you need to spend in order to be able to do even the most basic things is pretty immense, and not everybody is going to be willing to make that investment. The less the complexity, the less the investment, the more the probability, the higher the probability that somebody will actually go in and try something out in Web3. And I think the same goes for not just adoption, but also safety at large, right? Coming back to the point of us basically, if we natively integrate a certain yield opportunity, we're effectively giving you safe execution rails for whatever the transaction is that is underlying the yield generation, and there's no additional risk for you to perform this transaction, and reducing risk is just incredibly important from a longevity perspective. So if you consider somebody coming to the space, that's a question of complexity, and somebody staying, that's more likely a question of risk. And both of these can be addressed with native integrations. So we think that in order for this to be really something that can go mainstream, we need to have way more native integrations. We need to reduce complexity to the extent that, as I mentioned earlier, we give you a Web2 experience, while at the same time it being fully rooted in the principles of self-sovereignty that Web3 is all about, right? And I think CeFi is a very, very interesting case study, because it just goes to show that the millions of people that participated in CeFi, that the underlying ideas and concepts of Web3 are extremely interesting to people. People are very, very fed with the Web2 fully centralized ecosystems that were built, and the amount of taxes that effectively they need to pay to the middlemen, and how much they effectively are getting extorted by the gatekeepers of this infrastructure and by these systems. But at the same time, they wanted to have easy access to whatever this mythical land of Web3 was. And in comes CeFi, where they effectively say, we can give you access to all of Web3, and it will be as easy as anything that you've done in Web2. And that was a value proposition that was very, was very attractive to a lot of people. But at the same time, of course, CeFi really undermines the very principles that Web3 was built on, right? Which again is self-sovereignty. It's about you owning your identity, you owning your own assets, and you being able to transact freely with other self-sovereign individuals and smart contracts in this ecosystem. So I think it's about reducing complexity and thereby reducing also risk, but at the same time work and building it on the foundations of Web3 and building it in a way that is fully self-custodial and not cutting any corners. And that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to build something that is adoptable by basically anybody, while still providing you and giving you access to everything that Web3 has to offer within a couple of taps, while it's still being fully self-custodial and you always remaining in full control and your assets never being seizable. So I think that's effectively what's required for Web3 to go mainstream. And obviously we're at a long way to go, but I think that the work that we're doing with Omni is exemplary of what needs to be done in order for Web3 to be adoptable by everyone.
And also, you don't trade against your customers, right?
Yeah, exactly. No payment for order flow or anything like that.
Yeah.
That was the most Marco addition to the conversation I've ever heard. Okay, so going forward, y'all are basically building a wallet for the grandmas of crypto, right? If someone's new to the space, how do they onboard? How do they try DeFi for the first time? How do they buy an NFT? You want it to be on Omni Wallet, and I think y'all are building the rails to do that in a really awesome way. However, right now we're kind of in the depths of a kind of sad bear market. What trends are you looking forward to over the next years, maybe even 3 years, that maybe could take us out of this cycle and start moving us back into the mainstream and back up? For me personally, I'm pretty bullish on like identity and soulbound tokens, which I think could be pretty cool to add to a wallet-based application at some point. But yeah, I'll just let y'all run with that, and then we'll wind down with a few last questions after that.
Yeah. So, like I already said, I think for me a big thing is just this proliferation of a multi-chain first feature. I think Ethereum TVL will like bleed into these L2s. I don't think we don't have a ton of like these ZK L2s yet, which I think will really take a lot of market share as well. And I still hope for one being able to like buy a coffee, right? Even though I think point of sale payments is like one of the last hurdles that crypto will face, because it basically requires so much other infrastructure and so much like crypto mind share to be established in the public first. But like when we finally get there, I think that will like happen in the next few years, which will be quite cool. I think on the identity piece, the soulbound token stuff is really interesting, but it feels a little bit early to me right now. Like I see a lot of conversations on crypto Twitter about soulbound tokens, and they're still in the weeds of like solidity smart contracts, which is a bit of a red flag. And I think there's a lot of conversations right about. I mean, everyone in the real world knows that a non-transferable token is not gonna work for people, and I think that's what soulbound tokens are about, acknowledging that we need to basically have like recovery mechanisms. I think also that this like seed phrases, right? We've been talking about seed. I mean, people have been talking about seed phrases for like 10 years, I think, honestly. And there's a few avenues, right, to make custody a little bit better for end users. I think one approach is like a L1 specific account abstraction. I think there's a few EIPs focused on that. The smart contract route is smart contract wallets is another good route, where basically, wallets set up like relays and all this kind of stuff to enable like a gasless experience. I think that's something we're looking quite closely at as well, and of course, like this new MPC approach, which I think is possibly like the more multi-chain focused approach, right? Then it's not necessarily about having a smart contract on one chain, but it's kind of about being able to submit transactions to any chain in a secure manner. And I've even seen some like versioning projects where basically they're MPC, but then they have like an underlying blockchain as well, which permissions all the signing and stuff, which is quite interesting. On the NFT side, like this is a story I love to tell. But if you've opened up Omni, you would see that we have so much screen real estate for NFTs, right? Like it's almost half of our background can be dedicated to an NFT. And at the very surface of this NFT experience for us is like simply setting a background and flexing that online onto your friends, right? But when we started up what was then Stake Wallet, this was like always our design. And we, even from the very beginning, we had basically this rotating 3D stake, which would be present always in your wallet. And it was objectively a terrible decision for us. It was really slow, low spec Android devices, like almost like would crash the phone often. It was actually an MP4, so like if you were watching a video or listening to music and you opened up your wallet, that would all stop, but even then we kind of had this idea of like letting people upgrade their wallet, right, replacing that with a golden stake or like their own custom NFTs. So yeah, I think that's a lot about and yeah, we're only like just scratching the surface basically.
Yeah, I must say, for anyone on the space that hasn't tried Omni Wallet just yet, we for a great UI and UX experience. You guys are maxis at that. Well, it's been a great almost an hour of just diving deep into Omni. So before we say goodbye, I just want to give the both of you a chance to maybe mention anything that you've been wanting to mention to everyone here. Any last thoughts? Feel free just to shoot.
Feel free to chill as well.
Team
Yeah,
chill.
sure. I mean, we don't have anything to show but the wallet itself. So I would say, for everybody listening, go to omni.app and download our app for iOS and for Android. Even if you already have a wallet, I definitely, and then obviously all of you will already have wallets. Give it a shot, because we've spent a lot of time making this extremely easy to use and extremely pleasant to use, and you can even import your existing wallets. You can add your ledger. We've really designed this as something, coming back to the earlier point, not just necessarily for like the very early adopters and the grandmas per se, but I think it's a fantastic wallet for anybody that is still suffering from a fragmented experience on mobile. So we're compatible across all the major blockchains. So you can with staking, with liquid staking, with yield vaults, with lending support, with bridges and swaps. So you can really think of this as a ledger live on steroids, if you will, if you do connect your ledger. And we think it's an extremely awesome user experience, and we love to build this for our users and around our users. So if you want to give us feedback, try it out and give us feedback, you can join our Discord. We're always available on Discord. We love to chat with our community and get feedback. And we want to make crypto as easily adoptable as anything in Web 2, with all the benefits of Web 3, with without you having to sacrifice even an ounce of self-sovereignty. And I think we all think that we've built a pretty awesome product. We're all very proud of it, and we'd love for you to try it out. So yeah, Omni.app, give it a shot.
All of us would definitely agree with that.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, we agree with that. For everyone that tuned in today to our Let's Talk Cross Chain, we're grateful for your time. We really, really value your time. And to our guests as well, thank you very much for popping on this. As LI.FI, we're really stoked that Omni users can now move their assets across 15 chains supported by us in a fast, secure, and efficient way. But that's all from us today. We'll see you guys next time for the next Let's Talk Cross Chain episode. Make sure to check Omni Wallet out. It's been a pleasure hosting you guys. Cheers.